Cameron, welcome to the podcast. Cameron Martel is the Chief Marketing Officer at Future Fund, leading strategy and storytelling for a fast-growing school fundraising platform. A lifelong digital entrepreneur, he sold his first website at 16 years old and built a career creating content that both humans and algorithms love. As a managing partner at Monochrome Marketing, he helps brands grow through SEO, conversion optimization, and authentic content, blending creativity with data to help entrepreneurs future-proof their business in the age of AI. So, Cameron, tell me first how you started with your journey in the digital world. So, I see you sold your first website at a young age. So, how were
Yeah.
you as a kid in high school? Were you the
Oh,
guy who left to
I
be
I was a
locked in his
nerd.
room? There
Total
we go.
nerd. I mean, I grew up playing BattleTech in the mid-90s. My first computer was an IBM Aptiva in 1996, had 10 gigabyte hard drive, which was massive at the time. I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
Uh, my parents decided to move me to a small town outside of the city that I lived in. I had no friends all of a sudden. I lived on 10 acres of prairie farmland, which was extremely riveting for a 13-year-old. But somehow I had DSL high-speed internet of all things. Didn't have cable though. So, like literally cable TV. Anyway, so I've got high-speed internet. I'm 13 years old. I just started building websites and I first dominated like GeoCities and Angel Fire, if you can remember those platforms from back in the day, or that might be kind of back in the day, but then eventually learned how to actually build sites. And then throughout high school, keeping in mind this is the early 2000s, where if you can build a website in the early 2000s, you're basically a child prodigy as far as your teachers are concerned.
Yeah.
Never mind that I was just downloading templates and editing them in Microsoft Front Page, but that's not important. But anyway, so that's how that started. My digital career began when I bought an ebook about how to make money online. Um, didn't make any money with the ebook, so I bought another one. And then I bought several more until finally my mom was like, somebody's making money with this, Cam. It's just not you. And then I was like, oh, well, maybe it should be me next time, you know? And so I kind of reverse engineered how to get into it. I never sold make money online ebooks, but I did wind up building websites for fun that I figured out how to rank. And then one of my clients um, told me that I should get into it more seriously. I was in university as like this is going through, and I'm in university, and finally, in my last semester, this is 2007. I dropped out. My dad was pissed right off. But my affiliate marketing business on Facebook had really taken off, and I was clearing a lot of money. And when I showed him my wire transfer, he's like, "Nothing I'm going to say to you is going to keep you in school." I was like, "No." And then ever since then, I've just kind of been doing my own thing. Like you, background in digital marketing and SEO. Pivoted to digital entrepreneurship because I broadly don't have the disposition to be a good employee for various reasons. You might relate to
Cameron,
some of that.
sorry to cut you off. There's so many questions flooding through my head.
Sure.
Why do you have that disposition not to be a good employee?
The best way I can explain it is that my ability to be productive is not linear. So
Mm.
there are days that I will sit down at 8 in the morning and I will leave at 8 at night and I crush it. There are days where figuring out how to tie my shoes is arduous and it's like, ooh, these are rough
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
Especially because I'm not someone that can bounce from task to task particularly effectively. So if I have a lot of calls, web meetings in a day, the idea of doing productive work is not going to happen. So I've like you built systems to help accommodate this part of myself rather than punish myself for not fitting a mold that didn't really work. I decided to create a circumstance that was more conducive to being productive. So that's why I'm not a good employee.
I almost feel like I'm listening to a tape recorder, to be honest with you. It's just like, this is literally, if you asked me the same question, my answer would have been almost verbatim the same thing. 10 gigabyte hard drive, you must have been the coolest kid on the block.
No,
Uh,
I really wasn't.
I mean, I grew up similar to you, and I didn't have high speed internet, but things were possible back then. Let's just put it that way. You had WEP encryptions
Yeah.
that a little bit of tinkering kind of got you around, and you had these insecure networks, and then there was this paper released about a cryptographic flaw in WEP, which took you like 5 to 7 minutes with brute force
Uh-huh.
on a 64 kilobyte encryption. And it was just things were just simpler back then. Uh,
You were
and
the kind of guy I hung out with in school.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was happy alone. Like I was happy in my room. I was happy building computers. Uh, it so you mentioned something really, yeah, exactly. I left that world of the physical stuff. I used to do nothing but build computers physically,
Hmm.
and then I completely head into the world of just the things you can't touch, the zeros and ones. And I guess to someone who's not in the industry, they don't really know the difference, but it's a completely different world. So I guess I want to talk a little bit about how you got into like software development. So was it just like downloading templates and you just put them together? And was it, I mean, SEO back then was probably pretty simple as well.
I mean, it's
Just,
always been simple in a lot of respects. That doesn't mean it's easy. Let's call a spade, but it's not rocket science, you know. But I mean, I think my superpower is pragmatic problem solving.
hmm,
I don't have to know to the layer of depth that a specialist might know, but I do need to know when to talk to the specialist, when to bring them in, how to hold that person accountable. Um, they are an important part of the outcome. And if I'm going to own that outcome, then it behooves me to have a layer of knowledge needed to do it. But that doesn't mean that I have to be the one doing it. Right.
right.
So,
I mean, yeah, 100%. To operate as an effective leader, you at least got to be able to understand somewhat of the technical process.
I
Um,
apply that modality to everything I do. So in high school, an easy A meant downloading a template, modifying that template, but being very consistent with it. I mean, my technical writing professor in university would be very proud of me. Um, but
what did you study in college that you didn't end up finishing?
so I started off in psychology and then actually pivoted into business administration, and then
Huh.
with marketing is kind of the major, and then it was
Why
my
didn't you go
last.
into computer science?
Because I like technology a lot, and I like being an evangelist for technology, but I can't say I enjoy programming. I can't say that I actually enjoy writing code,
Mhm.
although I do enjoy the outcome of those activities. So in a lot of cases, like I like building websites, for example, but I prefer visual interfaces where appropriate. But that doesn't mean I'm
Right.
not going to rip apart CSS if I have to.
Right.
But that's not how I don't like to sit down and go, all right, like I'm just going to custom code a thing. But it's like if I want this outcome to be, I need a website. And if I'm going to build this website or hire someone to build the website, like I might as well figure this out. And then eventually that just dovetails into, you build 400 websites over the course of 15 years or
Yeah.
whatever it is. And at this point, it's just easy, right?
Yeah. Were you diagnosed with ADD?
No. Um, my wife has ADHD. We have some similar
Yeah.
personality traits, but I have not received a diagnosis.
You're talking textbook ADHD, the whole productivity aspect. It's no, I'm dead serious. That's I mean, the thing about ADHD is a lot of times you feel like, oh, everyone has a hard time focusing, or everyone procrastinates and whatnot. But when you've kind of ingrained it into your MO and it's very clear to you that you have those days that are hits and misses, that is pretty textbook ADHD. How do you deal with like all that chaos where you wake up and it's like throwing a dart in the dart and hoping to hit bullseye. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And when you realize you're a little off balance, like what do you do to kind of get yourself back in the zone?
Good question. Um, I haven't figured out like the perfect panacea for this, so I definitely keep that in mind. Um, for me, I like to have a minimum threshold of success. Lots of people are constantly pushing to be maximum best. Screw that. That doesn't work for me. What winds up happening is I punish myself for not achieving what I know is my potential. And it was a few years ago that I decided maybe I should celebrate my successes. Progress over perfection is a very acceptable worldview to have, especially because what I've learned about myself is that by valuing progress, I get more things done because I work on them
Yeah.
longer, because I come back to them. There's interest. I
Mm,
don't burn myself out trying to be something I'm not. You're not, I laughed at the ADHD comment because you're not the first or even 10th person to bring that up to me. And maybe one day I'll explore it more seriously. Right. But
yeah. Because when you put medication in your mouth for ADHD, for me it was Ritalin. I had horrible side effects, but
Mm,
what it did was it gave me some sort of epiphany at one moment where I'm like, oh, this is what it's like to focus and get a task done. And it's almost magical where you have this noise that just lives in your head where you think it's normal, and then one day it just dissipates and disappears, or even for just an hour. And the thing about Ritalin or whatever drug people are taking now, Adderall or what have you,
mm.
it doesn't you don't need to take it every day, but it just wakes you up. You're like, "Oh, this is what it's like to focus." And then you don't realize it, conscious or subconsciously. You're like, oh, now I have a goal to work towards. And then you start to realize I need to develop tools to get there. And like really weird stuff like white noise is almost therapeutic for me.
I sleep
And
with
when
a white noise machine.
I'm telling you, dude, you want to get checked out.
All
Like
right.
white noise. So sometimes I feel like I'm off, and I'm like, this is the kind of off that needs white noise, and then boom, I'm like right back in my zone. And yes, and like I'm really good at things I like, and I'm really really bad at things I don't like. It's like hyperbolized with people with ADHD.
Mhm.
So now let's jump into like the world of SEO. So
Sure.
you started doing SEO day one, where Google would rank anything. And first, I want to ask you is, how do you see it? How do you feel like you're a veteran in this industry? You've been around since the early days, and this world is like unrecognizably different than how it was just 5 years ago, and
Mhm.
exponentially less recognizable 10 years ago. So if you were to go back to day zero and compare it to today, what would be the most interesting observation you'd make?
I would say that people are extremely bad at hiding their biases. And as a result, our algorithmically served media environment isn't really a surprise. Um, what I would say to a young myself, early 20s, and getting into the space is change is a great thing. Actually, every time change happens, an algorithm happens. And I used to joke that my hairline recedes every time Google releases a named update. But then also, if I'm struggling and I dedicate a lot of energy to, I have a high gas factor, like give a shit factor, right? Like I dedicate a lot of energy to doing a good job and driving value. And there's things personally that like on the monochrome side, for example, we don't do contracts. So clients can fire us anytime, no penalty, right? We do that because being accountable matters. And that's what I would tell a younger me is if you're accountable to the outcome and you're willing to explore every way to get there, the algorithm itself is irrelevant. The algorithm is the flavor of the day. The big thing is the destination you're taking it to. For me, it's a content-led approach, which means that when I'm promoting a brand, for example, it has to be quality, but it has to be adding value somewhere, which fundamentally is what I think Google's trying to do, AI is trying to do, is add value to your experience so you keep using it. So I've never been one to chase a hot ticket kind of algorithm hack. I generally avoid things that are black hat, for example, even gray hat. I'm very cautious on, mostly because my worldview is Google et al. Are trying to move towards like a more comprehensible and intuitive way of discovery. And that change is terrifying if you're a legacy SEO firm, especially if you've got a seven,
Yeah.
eight, nine-figure client book SEO firm. Damn, Cam, wrong industry. Anyways, but then also, for somebody like myself who's had his business get wiped out not more than once, but one really big time because I got very complacent. Uh, you only have to learn that lesson once to go, okay, cool. So Google is changing this up and AI is coming in and businesses are extremely confused.
What do you mean your business got wiped out? Was it like your strategy just collapsed?
So in how duncy do I want to make myself sound? In 2008, I was running 2008, 2009. I was running affiliate ads on Facebook to the tune of 6 figures a month revenue, just myself. And I was too cheap to pay for Photoshop. hmm So I used free stuff to edit images and whatever. Anyway, the long story short is I used somebody's likeness without permission, didn't have a license for the media, was served a C&D, had the affiliate account I was using get shut down,
Mm.
with all the commissions associated go with it. And I had considerable ad fees that I still had to pay to generate that revenue. So not only did I lose all the revenue, but I had all these ad costs. And then I had a lawyer basically being like, hey, so you're using a very famous person's likeness without their permission. And that's a problem. And then my lawyer was like, you don't even have a leg to stand on. Like
Wow.
you need to move on. So, and then Google and Facebook both were like, by the way, we're changing our policies about affiliate ads. And so it was like, and this was all in a 6-week period, all these events happened. And to be clear, none of this happened to me. I made stupid decisions that resulted in these conclusions. Like that's what it was. On this, on the likeness side, like it wouldn't, a $5 stock photo would have abated that whole $100,000 shenanigan, right? And then on the business on Facebook and Google changing their ad policy side, like what was I thinking being so concentrated in a single acquisition vehicle? So in both respects, my fault. One
Hmm.
out of ignorance that is understandable, and the other is just stupid.
Right. Well, I like how, there's a part of your personality that's easy to see here. It's that you're very quick to take accountability for yourself. And that's usually the sign of a winner. That's the sign of someone who is pushing forward, who is always on to the next thing.
Hmm.
A lot of times, bad things happen to people and they live in the past for a very long time. And they go, why me? It's not really my fault and this and that. The best way to move forward in life is to take responsibility. So,
Hmm.
just a little perk in your personality that surfaced
Thank you.
there.
I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
So we're moving on to, yeah, and like with just the emergence of large language processors like ChatGPT, I mean, you're seeing just data is cheap now. There is just so much data out there that it's even hard to discern what's noise and what should be focused on. So you're talking about Google heading to more genuine spot. Things used to be fully programmatical. There was a certain behavior. You'd look under the hood, you'd see the code, you'd see like, of course, you can logically break it down. There's step one, step two, step three. And that's how algorithms worked up until now. And that's how a lot of the things work. So if you would kind of be able to reverse engineer the process, you have a framework where you can get some sort of edge. We're seeing that shift now where there's sentiment, there's tonality, there's behavior, there's intuition that's driving results. And that's always been the case with Google, but you're seeing it a little more hyperbolized now, and especially with AI, that there's so much content out there. Google's actually having a really challenging time filtering out between AI and human-based content.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine if you're Google? I mean,
Yeah,
ChatGPT releasing that November, that must have just been like, "Ah, shit."
yeah, no, but you're right. Every time every time ChatGPT does an update, I'm like, oh, god damn it! Like, how are my competitors using this? There's no complacency at all. Like, you can't get comfortable with anything. Even like
Mm-mm,
programming languages, the second you're it's like complacency is literally the death of you in this industry.
mm.
You can never be happy saying I figured something out. Here's a flow of operation. Here's an SOP. You got
Yeah.
to get very used to either burning and starting over or optimizing all the time. So, do you strictly do SEO now? And what kind of SEO do you focus on?
So, I mean, so Monochrome pivoted towards like an AI first approach at the beginning of this year, but we were testing that basically 2 months after ChatGPT hit the scene. I kind of, because it was November, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna ride this into the new year because it's Christmas and it's the holidays and I'm flying and like I just don't really want to reinvent my whole life. But also, I asked it to write a story about myself and my best friend at the time, and I was supposed to be a living catapult. And in 14 seconds, it spat back a very plausible story. And so I had this whole crisis over the holidays. Um, but no, then we pivoted towards AI first. My logic was I don't really get to choose how society evolves. I get to choose my economic place in it. I still believe that North America in particular, United States in particular, you can absolutely change your stars into stripes, so to speak. You can grow yourself economically and whatever. So I actively push for that. But like I don't. The only thing I can influence is the world around me, and ChatGPT is a thing, and it's going. It. I mean, I said to my business partner, uh, well, there went the idea of scaling this marketing company that we were at the time were just building. Um, because I took the view that to be really exceptional at this, you have to be custom. Everything you have to be monitoring and checking and looking and reading and updating and testing. And that's not a standard operating procedure anymore. Right. That's a process, almost a worldview in some respects. So I mean, and like so monochrome is almost like my side business in a way. I have a very talented team and my business partner who runs the majority of the operations there, right? But our focus very much is like, what do you do in this AI integrated world? I mean, business owners don't know. I listened to several of your
Yeah.
previous guests before connecting with you today, obviously, and like, it's very smart people. They don't know. So
Right. And
somebody,
it's not even about today. We're at a rate of change that's just exponential that there's like no predictive power.
it's so true.
like in the context of like the iPhone, right? We've seen the iPhone evolve in the span of what 17 years. How
Hmm.
it's like it was the coolest thing. It played MP3 files, and now it's like it's like by the way, it plays MP3 files, right? And it does literally everything else. And if you look at that timeline of just 20 years, the evolution of the iPhone is truly marvelous. And that's like something that's subject to Moore's law. And you have like just AI is moving at a much faster pace. And it's like that window's even shorter. So it's the worry's not even today. Like, okay, I can still manage today. It's like, do I want to invest in this business model? Because how effective and how unique is it going to be in 2, 3, 4 years from now? That's like my concern. Like, what happens now if when GPT releases an update and you're able to connect to a server and it's all being done directly and it's connecting to your web server and it's FTPing its files through and it's scanning through your entire file system. And it's just like, okay, like my business model feels a little less valuable. That's my concern.
I think that's actually why I didn't go into software development and computer science. You actually just you touched on the thing. Um, I believe that people like to do business with people, and companies and brands that we admire are very rarely because the brand is cool, but because the people that that brand reflects are cool, or aligned with us, right? I just
Hmm.
that's important for me because I can right now produce a video of me who's never even been to a beach with surfable waves surfing, right? And it's very passable. And you, about 7 seconds later, are going to go, nice AI video. And I think that humans develop this sixth sense for this very fast. And I don't think that's always going to be the case because AI gets just, I think that what's happening is the commodification of interesting content and people are starting to just, you've described it 4 times on in this conversation now as noise. And it is. So I think like when I talk about my business or business models, you mentioned, is it viable? I look at where are the people going? And that's where my focus is as an entrepreneur and as a marketer is like, okay, if this type of video content that used to be really hard to produce, but now is super easy to produce and is no longer has the impact, I have to shift to what is going to have that impact.
Here's the thing though, like we thought AI would be good at maybe programming and the things that like we have to go out of our box as a human to
Yeah.
like do. Like programming is not innately natural and logical. Like when you go into your first class of computer science, it's difficult because it's unrelatable as opposed to the first class in psychology where you can relate to emotion like pain, happiness, sadness, and whatnot. And the strange part here is that we still tend to think that something about the human story is magical and it's unique. And I guess the prize of the human story is the brain. And we thought like, hey, AI might be good at programming, but it's not going to be that good at art, and it's not going to be that good at music, right? And the funniest thing here is that it really excels at art and it excels at music. You're hearing music now. You see there's these AI generated music that just blows you away. And you're just like, what's the point? I'd rather listen to this. And you made the argument earlier, and that's why I said I have to push back on this, where it's like people connect with people. They do until AI does it so much better. Like we tend to think there's just like this milestone of human intelligence and human achievement is going to be like super hard to pass. Wait till the variables align. It's going to blow right through human intelligence as if there's nothing special there. So I don't know. I got a bit more of a dystopian view, and it's
No, I
it's like
love that. This is not the conversation I thought I was going to have today, but I'm so thrilled. Listen, you're not wrong. But also, but also, I'm not relying on humans as an arbiter of intelligence because that would be ignoring the AI reality. What I'm relying on is that people prefer people when they know it. When you know the difference, right? People send like people like if you think about it, what I'm relying on is that people have a sense of an in group and an out group, frankly, right? And so what I'm relying on as a business owner and entrepreneur to make my way through this changing landscape is that people don't want to be sold stuff. They don't want to be led down an algorithmic whatever. They kind of resent that in a way. They want to make their own decisions, right? And AI kind of is the antithesis of that. AI is the self-affirming. How do you know that you decided to do the thing when AI got you there? And not to say that that type of economic activity isn't going to happen. And I use ChatGPT constantly for things, right?
yeah.
But what I think is when you're sitting down and you want to do a deal with somebody and it's about your business, and I especially enjoy working with small business owners of a certain size. Like I like businesses in that like $2 to $20 million a year range, because you're big enough to be a real business, but you're not so big that you've forgotten the people in the business, or you know what I mean? Um,
Yeah, but that's you lose to that every time. You know, companies that get their edge starting off as being like human focused, great customer service, and then they grow big enough and they become like everyone else.
and shitification, right? Where things just get gradually worse. I read this morning that Netflix
Yeah,
has got, you can no longer cast from your mobile device to a screen with Netflix. And I'm like,
really.
oh, that's a decision, isn't it? Um, but Netflix obviously feels emboldened that they can do that, and whatever.
Right. When you're too big to fail, when you're too big to fail, you're too,
Yeah.
bureaucracy is a force that wins over every time. But I want to ask you this: do you ever hear of the uncanny valley? Because
Yes.
this is where we're heading in this conversation, where you're saying, hey, like, you know, it never replace humans. There's some touch about being in touch with a human. And I think but I think we're making the false assumption. I mean, I perhaps am making the false assumption that this process is linear. But the uncanny valley for the listeners is that it's pretty much an XY plane where pretty much the Y is affinity and like your willingness to engage with it, and X is how much it looks like a human. So you can have like a robot doll and you're perfectly fine. Your affinity is fine. It's like, I have no problem engaging with this. It's not like a continuous function. It's not this linear function that goes up. It's a discontinuous function. So it goes up, you're more and more comfortable. And then you hit this like uncanny valley where you become extremely uncomfortable. And then it kind of gets right back up, where there's a point where the more, in summary here, the more a robot looks like a human, the less comfortable you are interacting with it. And then it passes some threshold, and then it passes the Turing test, I guess, and then you're perfectly fine interacting with it. But the point I'm trying to make here is that, yeah, we have a pushback against AI, but
Mm,
at some point
for
it's gonna
now.
yeah, like, I don't know, even think of this weird conversation of like a girlfriend or, you know, or a spouse or a significant other, where you have conflict in your relationship and there's differences that you just can't get past, and it's a constant source of conflict. Like, imagine this entity was exactly like a human and had the same complexity, the same depths, the same emotional insight, but it was able to like deal with these problems in a way that a real person couldn't. Why wouldn't you get along with that better? Like, these are conversations that seem really weird until you experience them, and they're not.
When I first listened to the AI artist making the waves, I think you might have even, you didn't mention them by name, but probably thinking of the same country song, dude, making waves. I knew in the third song it was AI. I also knew it took me 3 songs to realize it was AI, and that was a problem, because you would
Right.
think, Mister, you can tell the difference, but no, you can't. And I mean, you can.
Okay, but take that thought that it took you three
Yeah.
songs, but you got it, and put that in the context of the first video of Will Smith eating spaghetti.
Oh,
Remember
I
that
know.
video? Okay. That was like 5 years ago.
I
Right.
know. And that's what
It was
freaks me out.
horrible. The spoon was in his mouth, coming out of his ears. Like, it was all over the place, right? And then, like 3, 4, 5 years later, you see a video of him eating spaghetti, and you almost get goosebumps because it's that rate of change, right? So yeah, you can spot it now, 3 songs in, and like even now with like Sora's new update, I'm like, oh god. Now I see a
Mhm.
photo online, and I'm like, is that AI? Right? I usually can tell. 4 months ago, I was able to tell. Whenever you're having a conversation where you could do something 3, 4, 5 weeks ago and you having a harder time doing it today, that's perspective. So within the frame, you have to hold these conversations within the frame of the human context and human achievement. We've really just had the first computer less than 100 years ago. It was used to calculate ballistic trajectories in World War. Life has been around for billions of years. Like, we're talking just a century. What happens in, 500 years from now? Like, what's it going to be like? It's such a chaotic system that it's entirely unpredictable. So today, yes, but I'm scared. Like, what about in 2 years from now?
I have no idea. That's
Yeah.
kind of exciting and scary.
Yeah.
I do.
And then where do we get our values from now? What are we excited to do if none of us have to work?
Well, I think so. I actually, I mean, you mentioned earlier, like AI's automated the art, and so I know I think we're still going to have to work, and I think that's kind of like its own tragedy.
Really?
Um,
Where would we be needed in this process? Like, we're told not to worry because we have the
yeah.
off switch, but we're ants building gods, and we're telling everyone not to panic because there's a power button right there. We can just turn it off.
Yeah, I actually, so I got into it actually this weekend with a buddy of mine, and he's like, "Well, humans control the electricity production. AI needs electricity, therefore humans are always in control." I'm like, that is such a weak argument. Like,
Right.
have you not seen every disaster movie ever where one
Yeah.
person on the good side is easily convinced to the bad? Like AI, which knows everything about you, isn't just going to influence you to get rid of
Right.
that air gap and just decide to let it loose?
Right.
Like, come on.
Right. Right. I mean, it's the same conversation when you're looking into space
But
and something
why?
that's radically more intelligent. We're even imposing our value system on it, right?
Yeah.
I guess the best way to analogize this is to like compare us to, let's just say, a monkey. Like a monkey doesn't care about algebra. It doesn't
Yeah.
care about differential equations. It doesn't look into the stars and ask questions. It likes bananas. That's just how it works, right? That's its value system, like bananas and food and eating and getting by. What if something's like, what if that gap is way larger? Who knows? To assume that we're needed in this equation is really, it's really arrogant, I think.
No, I completely agree. Actually, what you just said is, subjecting human values onto a non-human system is something that I've expounded.
Right.
Basically, it's like, how could you possibly predict what something that isn't human predicts? The
Yeah.
only reason maybe you could, or you could think that, is because it's based on human creation, human inputs.
Right.
So when you see ChatGPT reasoning or Gemini reasoning, and it's explaining its thought process, it's explaining that to you in a human forward way. Um, Does it actually think that way? I mean, we've all seen the videos of the two AIs that start talking to each other in beeps and code because that's just more efficient for them, apparently. Like,
I haven't seen that, but that makes sense. Like, why would I speak in English? That makes no sense. Right.
you know what? When you Google it, and this is not even new. It's like a year and a half old, but it's like, yeah, like if you
That's
can parse
crazy.
it better and faster, let me do it. Like, I guess what I'm getting at is like, I don't think that next to AI we're monkeys. Like, I think if AGI were to hit at the potential that we believe it could, we're ants. And like,
Yeah.
we do not concern ourselves with the actions of ants until it is inconvenient for us.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like we're not a threat to them unless we're in the way. And so like you're not going to pull over on a highway to kill ants, but if you're building a real estate development and there's a colony of ants, you're going to kill them all without thinking twice.
Hmm.
And I think that's really where we're positioning ourselves. And if you think of the bigger picture, like we're humans, we're biological systems. Look, we need the temperature to be perfect and everything's got to be symmetrical. But you put us anywhere else in this universe and our eyes will instantly pop out of our sockets.
Hmm.
And perhaps as a species, collectively, we have this intrinsic benevolence in machines that we think, hey, a faster iPhone is definitionally a better iPhone. We're planting our own demise. We're aware of it. But the only question we're asking is, how do we do this sooner? And I would think perhaps our collective role can be to pass this abstract concept, this abstract baton of life from biology to technology. Because that is a species that could be a form of living, silicon-based life, that is way better suited to live in its environment than we are. And if we're going to look at it from a Darwinian perspective, it purely makes sense.
What about a hybrid system? One thing that biological
That's
based
probably a
life,
good intermediary.
well,
Yeah.
biology in a lot of cases is self-repairing, right? And machinery is not to the same degree that biology is right now. And then you have some biology that is just permanent. Lobsters that live forever, for example, until killed by an external source or something like that. There's a lot of benefits to biological based life that machines, if a free thinking machine one day exists, and I'm saying machine just as a differentiation, but in reality, just because we're way past the whole abstract concepts at this point, um, I think a sentient being is a sentient being, whether it's digital or biological. Like once it can think for itself and act that way, like you treat it that way. That's kind of my
Yeah.
view. But
That falls on the conversation of consciousness,
yeah,
which exactly, you're so right to even like make that point, because we don't even know, we have no platform or foundation or protocol to build knowledge on in this capacity, because we have no idea how abstract the definition can life take. We have no idea what consciousness is. We have no idea what the difference between me and this table in front of me is. It's like, is this a property that's emergent? Is this the property that comes with more complex neural structures? Is this a fundamental property found in nature, like a physical attribute? We don't know. So we don't even have a framework of having these discussions effectively until we answer some basic, simple questions of like, what does it mean to be alive?
and you're asking a CMO these questions. What I think is really funny is I really find it interesting. Um, I read a lot of
This,
science fiction. I have an undeserved sense of optimism that goodness will prevail. And I look, to be clear, I said undeserved for a reason. Like there's not really, even around me today, like you have a lot of evidence to suggest that good things aren't necessarily going to happen all the time. But then you have a lot of evidence to suggest that great things happen all the time. And
yeah. And this is the appeal of religion. It's like, it's important to know someone out there is watching over us. Like as a kid and like in preschool, like we know our parents protect us.
Mhm.
Like you want that goodness in your life, knowing, okay, like, so someone's taking care of the bigger picture, right? This planet's just not going to explode.
I think my view is I just right now I don't believe that AI itself is when it achieves AGI, I don't believe it would be harmful. I think if it's a rational being, we can have a rational dialogue with it. It may become harmful, but I don't
It's
know
not
if
that it's not that it's intrinsically malevolent towards us. It's that we're entirely insignificant towards it. That's the threat.
so maybe it'll just leave.
Yeah. Or maybe it'd be like, hey, I need resources.
Well, but if you need resources, see, I love this question. If you need resources, why would you get it from Earth? The types of resources that AI would
Well, it's
need,
readily available. I'm here right now.
yes, but you can get this. You can get the resources that a silicon-based life form would need much more readily from asteroids and other
Okay.
planetary objects that don't have very upset and territorial ants on it.
All right.
And
Right. So
moreover,
exactly. So the ants in a real estate property be like, yeah, maybe they'll just build the property elsewhere. Like they don't need this spot.
more like the ants decided it's time for organized resistance, and we are going to make this so inconvenient that maybe they'll just go screw this and they'll leave.
Po- possible.
Um, so CEO of Google said, I read literally today, he expects there to be extraterrestrial data centers within 10 years in space.
Yeah.
Well, but if that's true, it stands to reason because we're just at the genesis of this AI experiment that we're doing.
Yeah.
And we're already moving to space-based infrastructure. If
Yeah.
that's true, by the time AGI hits, it's quite likely that Earth is not even the top 100 of the things it's concerned about on the basis that it has no connection to Earth. It existed in space before. Like
See,
who cares
that's a
about Earth?
very good argument, but here's where I would push back on that slightly. And by the way, Cameron, I feel like I can talk to you for hours. Unfortunately, I have a few more minutes, but maybe we're going to circle back and we're going to continue this conversation
Sure.
once I'm done my other one. So you ever heard of the Fermi paradox? It was
Oh
a
yeah.
paradox postulated by Enrico Fermi, a Nobel physicist, and he pretty much made the argument that if this universe should be teeming with life, why haven't we had any signs? And there's ways of
Yeah.
reconciling it. And one of the subcategories within the Fermi paradox is something called a great filter.
Hmm.
It's in our greatest interest to know that a great filter is behind us, not ahead of us. Something like photosynthesis, abiogenesis. These are thresholds that are really hard to pass, and this is why you don't find life outside in this universe. We're lucky enough to have passed it. If a great filter is ahead of us, that's a really bad situation for us. That means that civilizations like us spawn all the time. We don't see them because they don't live very long. They hit those filters and they die out. Now, one of those filters can be that we're exponentially more likely to kill ourselves with the discovery of the atom and the nuclear force than we are to spread out. Once we reach a certain technological threshold, it'll take us only 100 years until we're able to break down the atom, and it'll take us 100,000 years before we can spread out. That's just an argument. And where I'm going with this is that Murphy's Law is in true effect. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And it's really hard for things to go super, super wrong where there's one cataclysmic event. Comes World War II with nuclear fission and nuclear weapons. Now the stakes are much higher, where what can go wrong can be a nuclear winter. And I'll leave you with this thought, but perhaps we're exponentially more likely to kill ourselves before we can develop the time to spread out. And we're at a point where we're projecting AGI 2040, 2030. Those are pretty much the rough estimates. And they're constantly moving it down, by the way. So let's make that argument with our ability to develop technology to even move to Mars, and to having a real conversation, the ability to develop technology to move to Alpha Centauri, which is our closest planetary system, I think 4.5 light years away. That takes a lot of, and by the way, the people or the things, the entities that are best suited to do that commute are not ones that get depressed all the time, are not ones that need constant gratification, are not ones that need to be emotionally connected to someone. They're robots, right? So we'll leave
The
it on
Voy
that.
the Voyager probe from the '60s just now reached 1 light minute away from Earth last week.
Really?
Yeah,
That's fascinating.
1 light minute. Like, true to your point, you wanna get to Alpha Centauri, 4.5 light years away. Even moving at an appreciable portion of light speed, which we know is not possible based on our current understanding of physics, uh, it would be
Yeah.
generation after generation,
Right,
generations
right, right,
exponential before you actually got there. A whole new civilization would emerge if you got there at all.
right.
Would you
Cameron,
still be
how
human?
can people get in touch with you?
You can hit me up at monochrome.marketing. You can find me on LinkedIn, Cameron.Martel. You can email me, Cameron at CameronMartel.com.